Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington. My name is Barbara Bazell, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Today is Sunday, October 23rd. Whether this is your first time joining us, or this is your regular Sunday morning destination, we're glad you're here. UUCA is an intentionally welcoming congregation open to people of all backgrounds, races, genders, sexual orientations, and abilities. At UUCA, we encourage people to come for community, find inspiration, and live with purpose. I'm proud to share my experience on the board has deepened my appreciation for how our UU values are held and practiced by our ministers, staff, and lay leadership. As a newish board member and a longish time member of the Return to Campus Task Force, I have been deeply impressed by the thoughtful and generous discussion that precedes any decisions that are made on behalf of the congregation. This is not the kind of leadership that I have experienced in my workplace or other volunteer organizations, and it is truly an honor to be part of the care put into this place. It is also another way to deepen my faith in and connection to this community. I encourage you all to step up and help with something that needs doing, as you will gain far more than you ever give. Your thoughts and ideas are most welcome. Share them with us either by attending our monthly board meeting, catching us in a coffee hour, or one-on-one in a conversation. We hope today's service inspires, challenges, uplifts, and heals you. Join us to continue this conversation and share thoughts and reflections with others during our coffee hour in the back or online. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome.
I think I'm on. Am I on? Well, let's
Yeah.
do it again. Good morning, church. Good morning. Excellent response. I offer you a call to worship with the words of James Baldwin. This is called For Nothing is Fixed. For nothing is fixed forever and forever and forever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible for them because we are the only witnesses that they have. The sea rises, the light falls, lovers cling to each other, and our children cling to us. That moment, the moment we cease to hold one another, the moment we break faith with one another, the moment the sea engulfs us and the light disappears, that moment is ours to hold and to change. May these words from James Baldwin hold each one of us as we in turn hold each other. Let the twin flames of love and compassion be our guides. This is the point when we join in our sanctuary, in our sacred space, when we join in our hearts to be in community and to worship together. Join. We have a tradition here where we light a candle of compassion. This morning I kindle this flame, remembering things that you've heard me say before. I remember those who are in Florida rebuilding their lives after the hurricane we recently had. I remember the horrors of war and send our support and our love to Ukraine, but also to the other countries around the world that are bearing the weight of the brutality of war. And lastly, I want to send love and joy in one specific direction. Ketanji Brown Jackson, our newest Supreme Court Justice, just began her term. She has started with fire. I send her our love. I send her our love and our compassion and our strength as she settles into the role of Supreme Court Justice and she begins doing the work of balancing the scales. Our chalice this morning is going to be lit by Marietta Tanner.
Good morning. We gather together as a community of memory and hope to celebrate life and its infinite possibilities for love. Would you join me? We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within every human heart. May our individual sparks meet and merge, bringing light and warmth to the world.
This morning we'll be singing a hymn that may be unfamiliar, but you have all proven that you're quick learners. So our choir is going to sing one verse of I'm Gonna Lift My Sister Up, and then please join us. It's very easy to learn. And choir, if you will rise and sing that first verse, and then we'll all rise as we're willing and able and sing along. I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my sister up, she is not heavy. If I don't lift her up, if I don't lift her up, if I don't lift her up, I will fall down. Please rise in body and spirit. Let's sing together. Here we go. I'm gonna lift my sister up. She is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my sister up. She is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my sister up. She is not heavy. If I don't lift her up, if I don't lift her up, if I don't lift her up, I will fall down. I'm gonna lift my brother up. I'm gonna lift my brother up. He is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my brother up. He is not heavy. I'm gonna lift my brother up. He is not heavy. If I don't lift him up, if I don't lift him up, if I don't lift him up, I will fall down. I'm gonna lift my people up. I'm gonna lift my people up. They are not heavy. I'm gonna lift my people up. They are not heavy. I'm gonna lift my people up. They are not heavy. If I don't lift them up, if I don't lift them up, if I don't lift them up, I will fall down. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sophia. This is a point in our service where we have a wisdom lesson. It's sometimes called the time for all ages. So I invite the young and the young at heart to come forward. This morning I'm going to ask you to sit in the first row, not on the stairs, because we've got some cords and microphones going on here. Not the stairs, the front row. The front row. Thank you. Excellent. Come on in. Awesome. The front row. Yeah, we just got cords and mics and some things around today. Thanks, guys. So a wisdom lesson is for everyone. Usually when I give a wisdom lesson, I wait till the end to tell you the moral of the story, but I think I'm going to tell you the moral of the story at the beginning just to clue you in. Remember, a loving attitude creates a loving attitude. This story is about a woman and her town. Long ago, in a faraway town, there was an older woman who used to sit by the city gates. She watched the travelers as they passed through, and sometimes she would engage them in conversation. She would talk to them. One night, as it was growing dark, a traveler came along. He was weary, had been walking all day long. "Excuse me," he said to the old woman sitting there. "I'm looking for a place to rest, and I wonder, can you tell me what the people in your town are like?" The woman smiled at him, and in reply, she asked him a question. "What town are you from?" she said. "Well, I'm from Mychester. That's my town's name, Mychester," he answered. "Oh, tell me what the people in your town are like." "Oh, you wouldn't believe how awful the people in Mychester are," he said. "You wouldn't like them very much at all. They don't care if you're hungry or thirsty. They don't even pass the time of day with you. They don't want to talk to you. And if you ask them for help, they'll turn away or they'll send you in the wrong direction. If you're looking for the drugstore, they send you to the grocery store. If you're looking for the cobbler to fix your shoes, they send you to the drugstore. If your car isn't working well and all you need is an auto mechanic, they send you to the ice cream shop. They're not very nice, and they really are not very helpful." "Oh, what are the people like in this town?" he asked the woman. "Well, they're just like the people in your town, Mychester. I don't think you're going to like it here." The traveler was disappointed, but he picked up his rucksack and he moved on. A little bit of time passed, and soon another traveler arrived at the city gates. He saw the old woman sitting there. He smiled. She smiled. He approached her. This traveler was a little bit different. "I'm looking for a place to rest," he said, "and I wonder, can you tell me what the people in your town are like?" "Well," and then she asked the same question. "What are the people in your town like? And what's the name of that town?" And this traveler said, "Well, I'm from our Chester, and those people are fun and friendly. They're kind. I like them a whole lot. They're always there to help each other. Actually, the people in our Chester are often generous to a fault." "So I asked you about your people. What are the people in your town like?" he said to the older lady again. And she said, "Well, I think you're going to love this town. The people here are just like the people in our Chester, kind and friendly and loving. And, well, why don't you just come in? Come to my house. I've got soup. I've got an extra bedroom. My door is open for you." So in the beginning, I told you what the moral of the story was going to be, what the line that runs through it is. What did I say to you all? A loving attitude does what? Creates a... You're so quiet. We're live streaming. Come on, guys. A loving attitude does what? Creates a loving attitude. So when you all are making friends, this is for my new friends here, what do you do to make new friends? What do you do that's loving and kind? You're nice to them. That's good. What else do you all do that's loving and kind? Anything special? Yes? Say again. Spend time with them. Yes? Play games with them. Nice. Spend time with people. Yes? Say it a little bit louder. You say hi. And you ask them in. A loving attitude creates a loving attitude. Thank you all for listening. You're going to go off to your classes. We're going to sing them out.
peace to you on your way. May you grow in love each day, meeting new friends and opening your mind to the wonders of the world you find, to the wonders of the world you will find.
I offer you a gentle prayer this morning. These words were composed and put down on paper by Starhawk. Earth Mother, Star Mother, you who are called by 1,000 names and live in 1,000 cities, may we all remember we are cells in your body, and all of us dance together. You are the grain and the loaf that sustains us each day. When you are patient, when we struggle, we learn. When you are patient, when we are with each other, we are kinder. Earth Mother, we are radiant light and sacred dark because of you, the embrace that heartens us and the freedom that moves us beyond fear. Within you, Mother, we are born, we grow, we live, we die. You bring us around the full circle. You bring us to rebirth, and within us, you dance brightly, gently, now and forever. Amen.
Fuente amor, ven hacia mí y al corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla volar, sube en la mar, hazte moldear la justicia de la vida. Arraigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí.
Ours is a community that gives. We give of our time, we give of our talent, we give of our treasure. Thank you all for supporting UUCA in the many ways that you come forward to offer support. It helps us to assist the community and to enrich the lives of others. Today's an important day. We are celebrating United Nations Sunday. Our offering today will be used to support the work of the United Nations at the Unitarian Universalist Office at the United Nations. That's a lot of words. We often say it's the UU at the UN. The UU at the UN participates in meetings, conferences, and committees at the United Nations. They visit with member state representatives. They work with the Office of the High Commission for Human Rights, the Department of Global Communications, and many other offices and committees. It is in this way, doing this work, that they stay actively engaged in creating a world community that is accepting, that is more just, that is compassionate. The UUA office at the UN also supports human rights, climate issues, and peace work. What they do is bring the UU perspective, the UU values to international stages and global movements. Today's offering will be split as usual. 70% of our offering will go to this specific organization. 30% of it comes back to the congregation to help us continue to doing our good work. We want to make it very easy for you to help us. You can go to the website. There's a number of ways you can give listed there. You can write a check, simply put share the plate on the memo line, or as I always say, folks, you can give us your cold hard cash. Please give generously when the plate comes before you. The ushers will now take an offering.
Cantar una canzone allegre. Sì.
Yes. Woo. So we are blessed here with amazing music. Not only is Sophia leading the Sanctuary Singers, but the Sanctuary Singers are shaking maracas and eggs this morning, and we have congas. Fantastic. Thank you all. Thank you so, so much. Our offering is to give something back to the community. We are grateful that you take the time to write a check, to put cash in the plate, or to give electronically. Please bring the offering forward. Thank you. Thank you. Please join me as we bless our offering. We bless and receive these gifts, opening our hearts to true generosity. And together, let us be grateful when we give, be it time, talent, or treasure. Let us be grateful for our needs and the experience of vulnerability. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts to nurture this congregation. Amen. I have a reading for you this morning that is from a delightful little meditation book. The name of the book is Glory Hallelujah. Now please pick up your socks. The author of that book is Jane Maudlin. It's a collection of poetry and meditations and little readings like this one that she brought together. This is called Conscience. It's not easy having a conscience. We have a lot to lose, and sometimes we have to be ready to lose it. A good friend of mine almost lost a great deal while trying to truly live her conscience. She'd been searching for her dream home, spending weekends and vacations in another state where she hoped to retire. Finally, after searching and searching, she found the perfect place. It was love at first sight. The price was unbelievably low. The miracle of miracle was that her offer, when made, was immediately accepted. My friend had done lots of research to prepare for the closing. When she did the research, she discovered that the house title carried a restrictive covenant. And that covenant stated the house could not be resold to anyone of a racial minority. This restriction was against the law, but it was still written in the title of the house. My friend told her lawyer to make sure this statement was not in the title at closing time. He assured her it would be removed and that would be taken care of. Closing day came around. She took 2 days off work to travel to the closing appointment. Around that table were sellers, realtors, lawyers, and my friend, all pulled up. They were ready to sign the papers that they were handed. It's all as we agreed, her lawyer carefully assured her, but my friend stopped. She read the document from start to finish. She read everything she was going to sign one last time. And there it was, in the document, house not to be resold to member of a racial minority. I'm sorry, she said. I can't sign this. What? Was the reaction in the room? I'm sorry. I told you I can't sign with this restrictive covenant in it. Well, the lawyer said, it's all drawn up. We can't change it now. She stopped. She took a breath. She coughed. Well, I can't sign it. And my friend stood up to leave the room. She walked towards the door. There was no small amount of scurrying consternation in that room at that moment. The papers were brought back, the papers were changed, the restrictive covenant was removed, and she bought that house that day. You see, the ripples of our actions when we live as our conscience dictates wash up on distant shores, reshape our world, and change us and others. One heart, one neighborhood, one town, one generation, one world at a time. What we say and what we do matters. I'm sorry, she had said. I can't sign with that restrictive covenant in place. The documents were changed.
It is my pleasure to welcome you this morning to United Nations Sunday. This is an annual celebration of your voice at the United Nations, the Unitarian Universalists at the United Nations organization. I am Marietta Tanner, your envoy or liaison with them for our church. I live at Goodwin House, Bailey's Crosswords, with a goodly number of philanthropic UUs and other outstanding citizens who work to build a brighter future for us all. Among them, I discovered and pursued an outstanding person to become our speaker this morning. We Unitarians profess to believe in the worth and dignity of all persons, our first principle. Today, we want to emphasize our sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, not just for the United States. Several of you came to our workshop where our now retired director, Bruce Knotts, talked to our social action leaders about working locally and thinking globally. He said that on this small planet, it is not enough to just interact with our neighbors or even just our own countrymen. Toxic ash from an exhaust pipe in Pittsburgh can poison the soil in Ottawa. Global warming has no boundaries. We ask ourselves, have any responsibility for the bombed out families in Ukraine? Or is it just enough to find homes for the homeless in Arlington? We are now restructuring UU at the UN with a new director whom we hope will help us enlighten more congregations about the importance of the United Nations, showing how all that it does is current and it's important. And it is an important part of the United States foreign policy. We believe our speaker this morning will help us in this effort. He is chairman of the board of the United States Institute of Peace. He meets constantly with Nobel laureates and UN officials and congressmen and statesmen of various nations, seeking answers to the troubling questions which have our world in turmoil. Far are we from their objective that they seek, which is world peace. He brings to this position years of experience as a U.S. diplomat. He has been a diplomat in Africa, Europe, the Caribbean, and Asia. He served as U.S. alternate representative to the United Nations Security Council in 1992, and he was the United States permanent representative to the European Office of the United Nations in Geneva. He has taught at Howard University and currently is at George Washington University, and has been awarded an honorary doctorate of laws degree by his alma mater, Grinnell College. He is a thoughtful, charming advocate for the goals Unitarians aspire to. After the service, he will be pleased to chat with you at the coffee hour if you have questions. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Ambassador George E. Moose, my neighbor and our eminent guest.
Good morning. My thanks, first and foremost, to Marietta for her invitation. Those of you who know her know that her invitations are not lightly refused. And I also want to thank her for her very kind and generous introduction. And I thank all of you for your warm welcome this morning. First, a disclaimer. The program accurately lists my affiliation as that of Chair of the Board of Directors of the United States Institute of Peace. But what I want to share with you this morning is not on behalf of the Institute. It is a reflection on my own experience, both personal and professional, over the last many years. It's nice to look out and see some familiar faces in the audience as well. There's a sort of a rumor going around that Goodwin House has been taken over by UUCA, so there's some truth in that. This event is well-timed, as we know, since Tuesday, October 25th, United Nations Day, will mark the 77th anniversary of the UN's founding. And I noted that the theme of the recent UU at the UN workshop was social justice from a global perspective. And as you all know, the UN has, from its inception, been deeply involved in every aspect of the social justice agenda. From its role in peacekeeping and peace building, to its promotion of economic and social development, to its contributions to humanitarian assistance and human rights. My own interest in and involvement with the United Nations goes back to my days at Grinnell College and my participation in the Model United Nations conference in St. Louis, conference sponsored by the United Nations Association. Over the course of my career, it's fair to say that the UN has figured prominently in just about every aspect of my work, certainly during my time, my 2 tenures at our mission to the United Nations in New York, and during my time as head of our UN mission in Geneva. But beyond that, there is nothing I have done in the course of my diplomatic career that wasn't in some way touched by, connected with the United Nations. And for the past 19 years, I have taught a course at the George Washington University entitled Reinventing the United Nations. It's an effort to share with my students the lessons from my experience in working with the UN, the good, the bad, and indeed the ugly. Among other things, the course was an attempt to resolve the often heated debate between nationalists and internationalists here in the United States, but elsewhere around the world, about whether the UN is good or bad, and to do so by asking a different question. And that question is, good for what? So let me begin with a discussion of what the UN is not. It is not, as some might hope and others might fear, a supranational authority created to impose order and discipline on the world's unruly nations. That certainly was not what the founders had in mind, not the US, nor the Soviet Union, nor indeed smaller states, which had their own fears about creating a powerful organization that could trample on their sovereignty and interfere in their internal affairs. Nor did the founders set out to create a world government with the means to address and solve all the world's problems. For starters, the UN lacks the essential characteristics of a government, notably including the power to raise taxes or to raise an army. And it is important to remind ourselves that the total budget of the entire UN system, to include all of its specialized agencies, is a mere $60 billion, which is less than the budget of the New York City police and fire departments. Rather, what the founders envisaged was something more like an international secretariat, an organization that would facilitate communications and interactions between and among states and help implement and manage the agreements they were able to reach, and also one that would be subordinate and subservient to their will. Now, that helps to explain why the head of the organization was given the title Secretary General, not President. former Secretary General Kofi Annan, whom I had the pleasure of getting to know and working with, used to say that the initials SG really stood for scapegoat. Since governments were fond of invoking the name of the UN and its Secretary General when they found it convenient to do so, as in, the UN made me do it, or it's the UN that prevents me from doing it. But this ignores the fact that the UN is, in reality, nothing more or less than the sum of the collective will of its member states. To quote the last frame of a famous Pogo cartoon, we have met the enemy, and the enemy is us. Now, acknowledging these facts and limitations does not mean that the UN is toothless or powerless. In fact, considering those limitations, it is remarkable what the UN has been able to accomplish in its 77 years. So let me talk now about what the UN is. I find it helpful to think about the UN and other multilateral organizations not as an objectified other, but rather as spaces and places and platforms and frameworks that states have created to facilitate certain kinds of international activity: communication, negotiation, mediation, cooperation, collaboration, and other international undertakings. One can perhaps draw a parallel with stock exchanges, which, as we all know, were invented to mobilize financial capital to underwrite a wide range of private economic and commercial activity. In similar fashion, multilateral organizations are institutions created to mobilize the political, social, financial, and other capital to underwrite a wide range of collective international activities, notably those that can't easily be pursued or accomplished by states acting alone or even in small groups. Now, viewed in this way, I think we can begin to see that over the course of its 77 years, the UN has had some significant accomplishments. For starters, it has established platforms for the development of international laws and norms that have shaped and constrained the behavior of states and non-state actors. And I would cite as an example the large body of human rights law that has been developed within the framework of the UN's various human rights bodies. It has invented whole new practices, such as international peacekeeping, to help manage international conflicts, a role that was recognized with the awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize in 2001. And it has created structures for mobilizing billions of dollars from a wide range of sources, funds that it may not administer directly, to support collective efforts to pursue peace, support economic and social development, address violent conflicts, and dispense life-saving humanitarian assistance. Returning to a point I made earlier, I want to stress that it is important to understand that there are, in fact, two UNs. And the first is the collection of states that form the UN's membership. They are, or certainly see themselves as, the organization's principal decision makers, the entities with which ultimate power reposes and from which it derives. The second UN is the collection of agencies and offices that UN member states have created to perform a wide range of prescribed duties and functions. They include the alphabet soup of UN agencies: the UNHCR, the WHO, the ITU, the WMO, the ILO, and the list goes on. It is important also to note that the UN is not a unitary system under the direct authority of the Secretary General. Major agencies have their own governing bodies. For example, the World Health Organization has its own World Health Assembly, to which it reports. And many like the ILO, the International Labor Organization, and the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, were created years before the UN came into existence. And this is a further reflection of the reluctance of member states to invest the organization with extensive and concentrated power. As we know, most of the world's problems arise from the fractiousness of the first UN, the member states, resulting from their competing interests, visions, and ideologies, or from their failures to manage their own affairs properly. Moreover, when the second UN isn't functioning well, as often as not, it is because of disagreements and disputes within the first UN. If, for example, the US is fundamentally at odds with China or Russia on an issue, say Ukraine, it would be unreasonable and unrealistic to expect the UN to step in to dictate a resolution. It is similarly unreasonable and unrealistic to expect the UN to impose its will on states, large or small, when it comes to their policies on issues that are closely tied to their economic security and well-being. But it is also, and often the case, that problems with the performance of the second UN are the result of shortcomings and dysfunctions within the second UN itself. These manifest as bureaucratic roadblocks, incompetent or even corrupt officials, institutional blindness, jealousy, and hubris, all the ills that can afflict institutions at all levels of governance, including ones we know right here at home. Now, having painted a somewhat somber picture of the UN's limitations and faults, let me now take a hard pivot and make the case for what the UN can and is doing, and why it is critical, indeed essential, to addressing the urgent challenges of our time. Let me start by highlighting some significant accomplishments within the first UN, the member states, despite the acute political contestation and gridlock that we see everywhere in our world. The first concerns the votes taken by the UN General Assembly in recent months regarding Russia's unjustified and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. Just a few days ago, on October the 12th, the Assembly voted by a wide margin, to demand that Russia reverse its attempted annexation of parts of eastern Ukraine. This builds on votes taken in March to condemn the invasion itself, and in April to suspend Russia from its participation in the UN Human Rights Council. While these votes cannot compel Russia to cease its aggression, what they have done is to establish the political basis and legitimacy for the US and others to act to punish Russia for its invasion, including the imposition of wide-ranging financial and trade sanctions. The second example is the recent vote in the International Telecommunication Union, where an American candidate for the post of Secretary General defeated a Russian candidate by a significant margin. Now, why is this important? It's important because Russia would certainly have used its position of leadership in the ITU to undermine norms regarding access to and use of a wide range of communications technologies, notably including the internet. This, in turn, would have abetted efforts by Russia and other authoritarian states to curtail the flow of information to their own citizens and to use the internet to reinforce their autocratic rule. Now, I also want to highlight two contemporary examples of significant achievements by the second UN. The first is the brokering in September of an agreement between Russia and Ukraine to allow the export of grain from Ukraine and fertilizer from Russia. This deal, to mitigate a life-threatening global food shortage, has huge significance, and its importance simply cannot be overstated. Since the agreement was reached, more than 50 ships loaded with grain have departed Ukraine, most of them bound for countries in Africa and the Middle East that face existential food shortages. Similarly, the second UN, this time led by the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, has engaged with Russia and Ukraine to secure Ukraine's nuclear power plants to prevent a major nuclear catastrophe in the heart of Europe. This hugely important effort is ongoing, but already it has had important success. These are just two recent examples of things the second UN has done and can do when it is working well. Moreover, it is important to note that these are deals that states, even powerful ones like the United States, could not have brokered on their own because the political dynamics simply would not have made it possible. Now, having highlighted these examples of what the UN can do, I would not wish to leave you with a sense of ease and complacency. For in fact, there are many critical areas where I and others believe the UN can and should be performing much more effectively, and here I speak specifically of the second UN. My own list begins with more effective and committed engagement on issues of climate change and migration, two issues that are and will be increasingly intertwined. An important example is the role that the UN should be playing in helping developing countries in particular design and implement their climate adaptation and response strategies. Very much related to these are the issues of energy and food security, where UN action has been sadly and strangely slow, inept, and ineffective. In flagging these serious deficiencies, I want to stress again that we cannot and should not expect the UN to do everything, given the real limitations on its means and its capacities. But there are critical areas where we desperately need the UN to perform and to perform well. So let me conclude by again stressing as well that for the second UN to perform better, the members of the first UN, the member states, will have to do much more to help make that happen. By that I mean not just investments of money, but also of intellectual capital and political commitment. When the UN was first created in 1945, what few people know is that President Roosevelt in 1939 commissioned a group of foreign policy experts to begin looking at what the post-World War II international order would look like. That effort was sustained for 6 years, and it was the effort that ultimately informed the organization that we know today as the United Nations. We need a similar kind of vision as we look to the future of the next decade, 2 decades, and the next 7 decades for the UN. That kind of political commitment, that kind of intellectual commitment. As is the case in other areas of human endeavor, UN member states are inclined to prioritize how they spend the resources and the capital of the United Nations rather than how they invest in building its capacities to tackle the burgeoning agenda of urgent global problems. And that is why, in my view, the Biden administration's effort to reestablish U.S. leadership in and support for the UN is so important to both UNs. And that is why I think it is also important for the American people, all of us, to pay close attention to what is happening in and at the United Nations. The Chicago Council on World Affairs conducts an annual opinion poll that consistently shows that a substantial majority of the American people support the United Nations and our engagement with it. But I submit that opinions alone are not enough. We need to become more involved and more engaged. I am pleased to see that UUCA already has made a commitment to that through its UU at the UN. But I would suggest as well, as I'm sure Marietta would, that there is more that can be done there. And another way of getting engaged and getting involved is through your local chapter of the UN Association. UNA is one of the oldest NGOs in America, having been around as long as the UN itself, and having played an important role in giving civil society a voice when the UN Charter was being negotiated 40 years ago. One of its signature activities, as you all know, is its sponsorship of model UN conferences around the country for students in middle schools, high schools, and universities, including many here in the metropolitan Washington area. So I will end my brief comments here, and I look forward to perhaps an opportunity to converse with you at coffee time. But as you can see, we have come full circle. For this takes us back to where I began this talk, to my days at Grinnell College, to a Model United Nations conference in St. Louis, sponsored by none other than the United Nations Association. I thank you for your attention, and I thank you as well for your warm welcome this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that applause for our speaker. I would like you all to put your hands together again for Marietta, who has done endless amounts of work for us at the UN. Thank you. We are going to end in song, as we usually do. Our closing hymn is number 148, Let Freedom Span Both East and West. Please rise and body your spirit. The person on the right of you, the person on the left of you wants to stay in relationship with you. Leave this place knowing you get to begin again anytime that you make a mistake. Leave this place knowing, most importantly of all, we are never on this journey of life alone. Leave this place knowing these things, go into the world with joy, with spirit, and take compassion into the everyday of the week. Blessed be. Amen.